Hell ain't a bad place, and neither is Grab a Stack of Rock, especially when we're doing 50 years of Iron Maiden. Thanks for tuning in tonight. This is episode 15 of 50 Years of Iron Maiden, and tonight we are doing Fear of the Dark. Studio album from 1992. Harrison, welcome. Thank you for joining me. Anything you want to say before I dive into the nitty-gritty on this album?
Just that there's a lot of stuff to tackle. So, as you might have noticed, we don't have a guest for this one. That's because nobody needs a 3-hour-long Fear of the Dark episode.
Right. I think by some counts, there are 12 to 13 B-sides that we have to tackle tonight. So let's get at it. Let's not waste any time. This is the final album by, I think, ever produced by Martin Birch. It was actually co-produced by Martin Birch and Steve Harris. I believe he retired after doing Fear of the Dark. Mm-hmm. It was recorded from late 1991 into April of 92. And in a quick turnaround, was released on the 11th of May of 1992. Went to number 1 in the UK, number 12 in Canada, number 12 in the US, and number 11 in Australia. This album features a lot of shorter songs, a lot of keyboards, kind of a combination of past and future, perhaps. I'm going to argue that it also has Nicko McBrain's worst drum sound, but we'll get more into that. Most interestingly, perhaps on the surface anyway, is that this is the first album cover not done by Derek Riggs. This is artwork by Melvyn Grant. And interesting, you might also know Melvyn Grant from some such bands such as Judas Priest. That's Melvin's. He's a science fiction / fantasy artist, and they got him to do Fear of the Dark. But previously, if you're a metal fan, you know Melvyn Grant's work from Hero Hero by Judas Priest.
Yes, Harrison, and I think he went on to become the next most prolific Eddie artist after Derek Riggs.
Correct. He did 6 Iron Maiden covers in total. Harrison, anything else? We're going to take a closer look at the album art later on, as we often do at the end of the show. But is there anything else you want to say before I dive into the first track?
Just sort of a few thoughts on general in the album. This is the only Maiden album I'm particularly negative about. It sort of feels uninspired and tired, like they're chasing trends, which is something we'll get into with a certain backing vocal effect. And, there's a lot of songs on this album. It's a long album. It seems like they're just throwing anything at the wall, seeing what will stick. Like, let's do a power ballad. Let's do like this and then that and sort of thing. And it's I think it's my least favorite Iron Maiden album. Spoiler alert.
Okay, fairness. I understand what you're saying. We might just have different perspectives on what you're saying. But for context, 1992, grunge had already had a foothold, and Iron Maiden were coming off of No Prayer for the Dying, which was their Back to Basics album that had sort of a mixed reception by fans. And this saw them sort of getting more back into production values, so on and so forth. But the first track and first single was a song called Be Quick or Be Dead. It was written by Bruce and Janick Gers, the first Janick Gers co-write, because he didn't write anything on No Prayer. Now, before I talk about the song, Harris and I were discussing something offline. Bruce seems to have affected this new vocal expression that he does in 2 songs on this album where he goes, "Zack," or something like that. And both Harrison and I feel it's just a vocal expression, but I find it weird because it recurs twice. It feels like it's Bruce trying on something new. Like, this is my new thing, my new shtick. See if people like it. But he does it in the Be Quick or Be Dead. I want to say The Quick and the Dead. That's a movie. When I first heard this on the radio in the spring of 92, I felt like it was a bit of a turnaround. It's still growly in a lot of the vocals, which is something I didn't like about No Prayer so much, but there's more singing. The tempo is off the charts, and it really feels like Gers is finally part of the band. And I think, obviously, after a tour, it kind of was good circumstances for Janick, for him to tour and then come into this album with so many writing credits. Now, as far as the lyrics go, this is a rare song about big business, current events, and the state of the world. Very 90s in topic, and not the only song on this album that has that sort of subject matter. I think, aside from the things that I really do like about it, such as that really quick guitar part, I'm not going to try to mime it. I really like Nicko's drum intro. That's very simple, just There's a lot I like about the song, but I don't like Nico's drum sound on this album. It sounds underwhelming. It sounds somewhat, I'm not going to say artificial. That's not the right word, but it just doesn't sound like as big as it should be. It sounds muted. There's something wrong about the drum sound on this album to my ears. That's only my perception, so don't throw hate bombs at me. Anyway, Harrison, what do you feel about Be Quick or Be Dead?
Right, so I love this song. It's aggressive and powerful up-tempo tune. It's a direct continuation of everything I loved about No Prayer for the Dying. The growly vocals, the aggression, the power, short, sharp, punchy. Be Quick or Be Dead is probably one of my favorite songs on this album. Not that the competition is particularly stiff.
Ouch. Okay, so I think we're going to see a contrast here tonight. I'm not sure what order these singles came out in. I think this was the third single, but From Here to Eternity is the second song written by Steve Harris. Let's take a look at the single art because we're seeing again no Eddie on the single art. And that's disappointing to me. It's photographic single art. Here's the back cover. Okay. So he says, "Ew, Zach," again on this song. I don't know why. It's not the greatest song, but it does have a chorus that seemed to work live. It really got the audience engaged. I think Janick's guitar solo on this is mind-blowingly good. I really do. He was really coming into his own here. As we discussed in prior episodes, this is part 4 of the Charlotte quadrilogy, or what I'm calling the Charlotte quadrilogy, with 22 Acacia Avenue, Charlotte the Harlot, Hooks in You, and now From Here to Eternity. I don't really get what this song is about. The Beast and Charlotte were two of a kind. It seems to be kind of an ode to motorcycles. And there's a gang vocal chorus that I don't particularly care for. That hell ain't a bad place. Hell is from here to... I'm sorry. You can't like them all.
There's a very AC/DC-esque gang vocal chorus that permeates a lot of the songs on that album, and that is what I was referring to with Chasing Trend, because The Razor's Edge came out the year previously, if I have my dates correctly, sort of rejuvenated AC/DC. They were on a sort of a second career high, or a third career high, actually. And I think, Maiden were trying that because it was popular at the time. From Here to Eternity, it's not too bad of a song, but I don't like those gang vocals. I think I dislike this song more in principle than I do actually listening to it, because I don't mind it when I listen to it. The live versions aren't too bad, but just the principle of having AC/DC gang vocals on there is Maiden, supposed to be trendsetters, not chasing trends, sort of thing.
While I'm hesitant to get into the live versions yet, because we're going to talk about that when we get to a real live one, I do think sometimes these Maiden songs with other people singing backing vocals don't always work well live, especially when when Adrian's not in the band. It's my final part of that thought. When Adrian was in the band, different. Anyway, on to track number 3. This one was actually, I don't think it was a single until much later on, but it's Afraid to Shoot Strangers, written by Steve Harris. Now, this is a song that I find very remarkable right from the beginning, right from when I first heard this album. It has 2 or 3 really strong guitar melodies, beautiful guitar melodies, if I must say so. They recur a lot. This is when people start complaining about how Maiden's getting repetitive, how they repeat hooks over and over and over again. That happens a lot on Afraid to Shoot Strangers, but it's working here. Dave and Janick really sound synced on those guitar melodies. They really sound great together. I think this is one of the greatest songs on the album and one of the best songs that Maiden has written about war. This is about the Gulf War, so again, current events.
Well, it depends who you ask. If you ask Rod Smallwood, which we'll get to later, you're like, nobody writes about the Gulf War anymore. Nobody's going to remember it.
That's right. We'll get to that. That is something I look forward to talking about. Just finishing my thought here. Many sections all working together, from that soft intro to the blowout fast end section. But again, best of all of those guitar melodies. I just love them. I think that's what makes the song particularly special. The lyrics are poignant as well. I'll give Steve isn't always isn't always. He is sometimes, but isn't always great at poignant. But these lyrics are. And I Harrison doesn't remember, but I remember the Gulf War, and I remember being flooded with all that video footage every night on the news and everything like that. And I remember how it was the subject of like dinner table discussions over, at dinner time. And I think Maiden did a great job with Afraid to Shoot Strangers. Oh, there you go.
All right, so I love this song, but I hate this version. Bruce's soft singing, I've often been critical of it in the past, and I'm critical of it here. It sounds dull and lifeless. But for me, so I first heard the live version that would be a B-side in 1995, and I was like blown away by the song, especially the soloing. Like on the live version, you could hear every single note that was playing, and it was a fast solo, but every note was fully formed. You could hear it. Then I came to the studio version, and the guitar solo was just like this indecipherable mush of notes. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but it just sounds a bit sloppy live. It sounds a bit more like a slush of guitar sound. The solos aren't fully formed. No, that's not. That's the wrong thing to say. The notes don't sound like they have as deeper formation on it. It's hard to explain, but I was basically very disappointed when I came to the studio version after hearing the live version of this song.
Okay,
but what a
fair enough.
fantastic guitar solo it is, that one.
One thing about this Maiden album that you can argue is that it has a stronger side A than it has a side B. And you can also argue that they kind of unloaded some of the best songs right off the top here, because we start to get onto shaky ground with the Bruce and Janick written Fear Is the Key. Very different groove for Maiden. Second song about fear on the album so far. It has sort of this exotic vibe with that, and it's kind of Zeppelin-y maybe. They're trying to get into that kind of, it's not a Kashmir, but they're kind of getting into that exotic vibe like Zeppelin did with Kashmir. It's Maiden doing something new. As Harrison said, they're throwing things against the wall here and seeing what sticks. They do a lot of that on this album. I give it credit for being different, but it is not a favorite song of mine. I don't know. Fear's the key to what you want to be. The lyrics don't hit for me either. Sorry, Bruce.
Yeah.
Sorry, one more thing, and I'm not certain, but that might be a lot of slide guitar on this album, on this song. I'm not certain, but it sounds very slippy and slidey to me. Go ahead, Harrison.
Sounds like it was written by Jonathan Crane. Anyway, no. This song is boring. It doesn't go anywhere, and it just gets more and more aimless as it goes on. I think it's my least favorite song on the album.
I might agree with you. We'll see as we continue to go. Childhood's End is next. It has nothing to do with the Arthur C. Clarke novel. This is written by Steve. Cool beats by Nico. I'm not going to try to mime it, but if you know the song, you know what I'm talking about. They're not stock metal beats at all. It's something that only Nico could do. It's almost like I think Nico should sometimes get songwriting credits on these songs, because there's composition to the drum parts. We've said this before about Nico. He's very musical. But Childhood's End, current events again. We're talking about starvation. We're talking about tyrants, world events in the 1990s. I don't think it's a favorite of mine again, but I give Maiden a lot of credit for trying new things at this period of time. That's not something that Iron Maiden frequently do. They don't stray off their track very often. But so again, new territory. And in the 90s, that was also a trend. Were bands diversifying, trying new things, expanding. That was very, very an early 90s thing.
Yeah,
Go
I'm
ahead,
just glad
Harrison.
we didn't get a grunge song on here. Childhood's End is better. The solo break sort of ties it all together. If you can make it to that part of the song, you'll stick it out through the rest of the song.
Okay. End of the Side, and another single without Eddie on the cover. Can really tell Derek Riggs wasn't around at the time. Wasting Love, the ballad, met some resistance by some fans. I love it. I think it's an outstanding ballad. As far as I can think of, it's probably the first Iron Maiden song that's really about love. Not a story necessarily, but a song about love. It's powerful. The lyrics are deep. I'm no Peter Kerr when it comes to interpreting these lyrics, but the way I see it, wasting love is wasting love on the road with women in different cities that you'll never see again. You know, that's the way I hear the song. I might be completely wrong, but that's how I read it. And I'm certain that that's something that Maiden have experienced. The chorus is absolutely epic, magnificent vocal performance by Bruce. But in this case, the verses are just as strong, and Bruce is singing with so much emotion. You know, maybe someday. So powerful. I really like that main finger picked guitar part, but it's very different from Maiden. And let's face it, very risky doing a love ballad. So again, we're throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks, and we're doing something trendy in a ballad. You know, Metallica had put out an album a few months earlier with ballads. So maybe Harrison's onto something. Your thoughts?
I'm in the other camp on this song. I think the song is boring. It doesn't really do anything for me. Although this is coming from a person who absolutely loved No Prayer for the Dying, the title track, which I thought was an awesome power ballad that came naturally, as opposed to this, which reeks of like, let's do a power ballad because why not? You know, power ballad. Metallica did one, sort of thing.
Are you quite finished?
For now.
I also want to say that this is the side closer, but I think it's a good side closer. Obviously, Harrison's going to say it's a rubbish side closer, but let's turn the page, so to speak, and move on to side 2 of this album. We have The Fugitive, written by Steve Harris. I didn't kill my wife. I don't care. It's a great movie. I'm not sure if this is really film accurate or not. I haven't seen the movie in a long time. But the basic concept is you have a fugitive and he's on the run. He's being hunted down like game. I think the verses are actually better than the choruses on this song. And once again, Nico's drum pattern is pretty different. It has his stamp all over it. And again, I think it's very musical. Once again, though, the choruses just don't hit for me. Your thoughts on The Fugitive?
This is a solid song. I like the choruses, but this song is like 9/10 of the way to being a great song. But there's just some little bit that's missing for me to put it on like the level of Be Quick or Be Dead.
It's funny how we're just on different points on a lot of these songs. On to the first Dave Murray co-write. This is with Bruce Dickinson. I'm not sure if there's ever been a Murray-Dickinson combination before. I can't remember. This is Murray co-write number 1 of 2. The chorus is really good, although it's one of those shouty choruses with backing, the backing vocals. It's more of a deep cut. I think it's decent. I just don't have a lot to say about it. It's not filler. I wouldn't call it filler. I think it needs more to the chorus. I think we need a little bit more. But it's not filler. Go ahead, Harrison.
Well, I like this song a lot. The chorus rocks, as you said. The pre-chorus building intensity is also great. I know that there are those AC/DC-esque backing gang vocals there, but I think they actually work quite well on this song. Or it's a case of this song is just good enough as it is that I can sort of ignore them. One of the two, but I really like this song. Good deep cut.
I think you've said before when Dave Murray writes, we get a certain level of quality. We also get something unique. Dave's songs are usually just a little bit different. They're not the same as an Adrian song, for example. But back to Janick, we have a really weird song called The Apparition. The lyrics kind of meander. It's somebody communicating from beyond the grave to somebody alive, an apparition. But then it just kind of meanders, and he's talking about how you can count your true friends on one hand. It's true. I'm not sure how stuff like that. Maybe it's just somebody just imparting useless advice at the end. I don't know. It's a weird song. It's also kind of Zeppelin-y. You know, it's kind of, I don't know. I don't think this one works. I find it goes on too long. I I want to be more positive because again, I don't mind bands experimenting and going a little bit left, but so much stuff on this album just feels like it needed just another hook, and the Apparition needed another hook. Over to you, Harrison.
I think this song's all right. There's nothing I dislike about it, but it doesn't get my blood pumping like, Be Quick or Be Dead or the explosive finale of Afraid to Shoot Strangers. Something funny though, on the 1998 remaster that I have, there's a typo on the back where for the Apparition, what happens is basically part of the writing credit has been transposed there. So on the back, it's listed as the Apparition / Gers.
The Apparition of Gers. I hope that's not a bad omen. Yeah, that is not on the original CD. That's funny. All right, moving on. I think this is the best song in the album, and it's a Dickinson Murray co-write. It's Judas Be My Guide. I think this song, both you and I picked it for the one track for the upcoming tour, the Run for Your Lives tour. I think we both picked Judas Be My Guide as one of our wish list songs that they've never played live before. Magnificent song. The guitar melodies, everything about it. It's got some power to it. Bruce's vocals are on point. He's using the rasp part where necessary, but then he follows it with some really strong wailing. The section before the chorus, nothing is sacred back then or now. Great stuff. This is just awesome. This is a song that maybe this should have been the single instead of From Here to Eternity. Maybe it was a bit too traditional Maiden for them to think it had a chance as a single. I don't know, but it's a great song. It's the deep cut. It is the true gem on this album. Nicely hidden away on side 2. Just as we're, kind of getting ready to hit the stop button, they hit you with Judas Be My Guide. And it rejuvenates the album at that exact point, right when it needed it. It's very tempting to always hit the back button and listen to it a second time. Everything from that opening guitar figure, it's brilliant. Everything about it. There you go.
Yeah, now this is more like it. This is the best song since Be Quick or Be Dead, in my opinion. Legendary chorus. The pre-chorus is great, as you mentioned. I also like the vocal effect that's going on in the chorus with the layering of Bruce's is very different from this AC/DC's gang vocal that's on most of the rest of the album. And I think that's part of the reason why the song works so well. It not only, it's not hard to sound fresh on a half-baked album like this, but it sounds fresh, unique, while also being quintessential Maiden.
And then we get to a weird one. The weirdest one in the album, Weekend Warrior. Janick and Steve wrote this one. Is it about soccer hooligans? Do you know? It's what it sounds like to me. Okay, so it's about football hooliganism, which is not a subject that we in North America understood. Like when I first heard it, I was wondering if they were talking about paintball. I guess maybe it's maybe both things attract the same kind of personalities. I don't know. Here come the acoustic guitars, though, which is this is very different. It really is. There's these acoustic guitars, and then it has like a hard-hitting verse section. Good on them for trying, but I think this is the one that mostly needed to be deleted from the album. I don't know. I don't know, Harrison. I don't know what to think. I want to give these guys credit for writing something just a little different. Like the acoustic sections are more like in that Jethro Tull kind of mood than anything else, and then you get hammered by these cool, more AC/DC like verses. Maybe both of those ideas were good, but not together. Maybe that's what I should be saying. Yeah, I'll go with that. Good sections, just not together.
Yeah, I kind of like this song. It's a little goofy, but it's also a little catchy. It's got a great hook, I think, when it finally does get to the chorus. It takes 2 whole verses to do that. The bridge and solo section is cool too. I don't think this song should have been deleted, but I definitely think there are other songs on this album that should have been deleted.
What about the closer? The one song on this album that has had perpetual longevity. Almost every tour after this played live. Fear of the Dark. I loved the song in '92, but I don't think it has longevity for me. I got bored of hearing it so much, to be honest with you, Harrison. And I think maybe it's because it's on the closing of almost every live album. I give the song full marks. I think it's a great song. When the album came out, I rated this pretty much up there with Afraid to Shoot Strangers, but it just hasn't lasted for me. It does have a bit of that repetitive quality as well, but you can't knock the song. Somebody must love it if it's still in the damn set list. What do you
I love this song. It was my first favorite Iron Maiden song, and I still love this song. But I hate this version. This studio version suffers from this metronomic perfection and ensuing stiffness that sort of plagues Black Sabbath's Heaven and Hell album. Everything sounds so, all the edges are like rubbed off all the guitars and stuff. Everything sounds so like perfectly constructed, put together. Everything is like precise and in time. And because of this, it sounds like very disjointed and stiff and wooden to me compared to the live version, which flows a lot better and it's got a lot more energy. I'm not fond of a lot of the studio versions on Heaven and Hell because they just sound too perfect to be heavy metal. They sound too like polished, and this version of Fear of the Dark is like that for me.
Hot takes here on Grab a Stack of Rock. Okay, fair enough. I guess at this point we can move on to the B-sides, unless there's anything else we need to talk about with Fear of the Dark. I think that covers it. B-sides, there's a lot of them, and we're going to talk about every single one. Whew, let's get started. Some of these are pretty silly. Nodding Donkey Blues, which is credited to the full band, including Nico, is probably the silliest. It's a comedic blues jam about a fat chick, but it's not really all that funny. She got tits just like hot air balloons, and I mean the Hindenburg. There's a lot of Hindenburg jokes. AC/DC do this kind of thing a lot better. There's a lot of AC/DC here, isn't there, on this album? The interesting thing about this album is that there's piano. It might be the only time I've ever heard piano on an Iron Maiden song up until Empire of the Clouds, much later on. I don't know who's playing piano, but
no, I couldn't find a credit for that. I looked, but unfortunately, it's not listed.
They did have a live keyboardist at that time. What was it, Michael?
Yeah, usually it was Steve playing the keyboards in the studio. Right. So if I was a betting man, I'd put money on Steve being the piano.
I wouldn't, and the reason I say that is because this is a very different kind of keyboard playing. This is more, fair. Saloon kind of piano playing. A lot of, it's more Little Richard than just background.
Well, it's a good thing patches. I'm not a betting man then.
Well, you could. What if you're right though? Moving on, we have another Montrose cover, another Sammy Hagar writing credit on an Iron Maiden thing. Space Station number 5. This should have been way better than it is. It gets jokey. It has a magnificent riff. Bruce's singing on it is great up until he starts doing this annoying nya 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 part. It's terrible. It ruins the song. It's like it stops the momentum dead center. It's like they stopped taking their cover songs seriously at some point. And then there's the ending when the song keeps getting faster and Bruce is treating it like a horse race, and he's like, and it's asshole and wanker and prick and asshole and first, and it's funny, but it's only funny like a couple of times. Dave Murray's guitar solo.
Similarly for me, I'm gonna say that the song was pretty much ruined as it went on. I didn't think it was that great to begin with, but then again, I wasn't very familiar with Space Station number 5. And just to talk about Nodding Donkey Blues, as you pointed out, it's lyrically kaput, but it's fun to hear Maiden do this style.
I suppose. The last thing I wanted to say,
I meant musical style, not lyrical style.
I still don't agree. I don't want to hear Maiden play blues. Sorry. But I do want to say that Dave Murray's guitar solo on Space Station number 5 is, chef's kiss, as the kids say today. Then we have another joke song, and this one is unlisted, but it has become known as Bayswater Ain't a Bad Place to Be. And it's about 6 or 7 minutes of Bruce, once again, doing his best Rod Smallwood impression with, I assume, Janick playing acoustic guitar.
Yeah, it's Janick doing a very catchy acoustic.
And all it is just
accompaniment.
It's just junka 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 jana junka 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 jana, and that's all it is. While Bruce goes, well, I know we have a lot to talk about with this song. The title refers to one of Rod's suggested fictional titles for the new album. There's a really funny section where Bruce is doing this Rod Smallwood impression, and he talks about, I've got the title for the album. We don't want to call it Fear the Dark. And he says, I've talked to the minicab driver, and I've talked to the bloke at the bloody off license. We're going to call it Blood, Sweat, and Beer. And that's just one of the titles that he comes up with in this song. And I know, Harrison, you have another favorite moment where
Bayswater Ain't a Bad Place to Be is hilarious. It's a total blast through and through. A line that I specifically wanted to bring up is, don't be so pedantic, when he's talking, fictionally arguing with Steve Harris. Why can't they write proper songs about proper things like cricket? And there's a lot about cricket and golf in there, but my absolute favorite line is the one where he's just like, all right, what's this on the bog wall then? I'm not afraid to shoot managers. Who put that there? Merck put that there. He bloody works for me. He never told me he could read or write.
And that would be Merck Mercuriadis, who also is involved with Catherine Wheel, which is a band fronted by Bruce Dickinson's cousin, Rob. So yeah, that's a funny part. He's talking about, there's a part where they're going golfing, because one of the things he wants to do is, he doesn't want to call it, he doesn't want a song about the Gulf War. Why don't we just do a song about golf? Golf's happening all the time. Happens every year. The Gulf War, that only happens once. But there's this part where he's playing golf, and he's like, I'm gonna bloody address, get out of the way, I'm gonna address the ball. And
I'm not addressing an envelope, I'm addressing the ball.
Yes. And he's telling Nico what not to wear on a bloody golf course. You wouldn't wear silk bloody satin I don't care if you're a pop star. The Queen plays here. She would play here if she played golf. And then there's another part where they're talking about the Bayswater thing. No, Bayswater isn't rock and roll, Steve, but the bloody Isle of Wight wasn't rock and roll until the Beatles went there. Well, I know the Beatles never went there. And that's when you say, stop being so pedantic. It's just it's all gold. It's all gold. And even though there's not much musically going on there, Bruce's vocal performance as Rod is so damn engaging. I think if you were a casual Maiden fan and you just put it on, you'd be like, what in the hell am I listening to? But
yeah, so this was a hidden track on some of the Be Quick or Be Dead singles. And then it also, when it got put on the bonus disc of Fear of the Dark, it was basically put at the end of Space Station number 5. They were one track.
That's 100% correct. And that's why it's at this point in our notes, because I've been using my 2 CD set as my guideline. Then we have an actual cover that's not jokey, and it's I Can't See My Feelings by Budgie, written by Tony Burge and Burke Shelley. Maiden and Budgie do go together hand in hand, but I just don't find this cover to be as memorable as I want it to be. It's a great riff. Steve is playing Burke's bass part perfectly. I don't know. It's not hitting me. Sometimes it's just.
I think this is an awesome cover. I think it's one of their best. I think Bruce sounds great here, the whole band. I would have liked if they'd returned to some singing at the very end. I don't like it when songs go on long instrumental tangents and then don't have something at the end as a payoff, because it's like, I know this is sacrilegious to say, you know, Iron Maiden instrumentals aren't engaging, but it's like I listened through all that soloing just to have the song, you know, peter off, sort of thing. I wanted like a rainbow, still I'm sad, thunderous finale sort of thing to cap it all off.
That would be awesome. I just want to also point out that unfortunately the bonus CD does not include all the B-sides. We're gonna have to take a look at the singles as well as we go through here.
Yeah, there were a lot of B-sides, and a lot of the live ones didn't make it onto there. But one live B-side did make it on there that wasn't on a Fear of the Dark single, but was on the Fear of the Dark live single from a real live one, which we will get to next episode.
It gets confusing, doesn't it, folks? Don't worry, we will. Judas be your guide? No. 50 Years of Iron Maiden be your guide. We have another cover here, although the lyrics were written by Steve Harris. Roll Over Vic Vela, and it's another comedic one. And I kind of get a Mission from Airy vibe. It sounds like somebody's recording a conversation here secretly. And I don't know, Vic Vela, he must be a roadie. It sounds like he's also
he was one of their longtime Rhodes personnel, and this was essentially a tribute to him. And I believe all the recorded sections are of him.
Yes, correct. And he's eating crisps, or somebody's eating crisps while they're recording it. It's very loud, but he's Maltese, as you can tell from the lyrics. It's Roll Over Beethoven by Chuck Berry. Again, it's hard to, if you were a new Maiden fan, you'd be really confused. You'd be like, who is Vic Vela? Isn't this Roll Over Beethoven? The recorded part is kind of strange. He's like talking about somebody who fell into some mud and he had to lift him up with a forklift. I don't know. It's probably a lot funnier to the guys when they were there, but it is fun hearing Maiden play rock and roll, just rock and roll, straight ahead rock and roll.
Yeah, it is a fun cover, a lot more fun than their more other jokey ones from this era. And I don't think it's a particularly bad cover either. I think it's a lot better than Johnny Be Good by Priest. I mean, that's not a high bar to clear, but I still think it's, and like you said, I really enjoy their take on Roll Over Beethoven musically.
Yeah, it is fun. You mentioned earlier you liked hearing Maiden play more of like a straight blues. Well, this is more what I want to hear Maiden play. This is cool. Okay, so now we're moving.
I wanted Maiden to play blues. I said it was just nice to hear them do blues for a change.
Okay, fair point.
But now I'm being pedantic, which Rob doesn't like.
Now we're moving on to a track that isn't on the 2 CD edition. It's on this single here, and we don't have much to say about the.
It's not even a B-side, as far as I'm aware. It's the A-side.
It's an A-side. It's actually an A-side, yeah. Ooh, my disc fell out. From Here to Eternity, the Triumph mix, and weirdly enough,
presumably not Canadian power trio Triumph.
I assume the Triumph motorcycles, because there's a lot about the riding on a bike. It's not listed as the Triumph mix on the back cover. It's only listed as the Triumph mix on the actual CD. There it is, right there. And I cannot hear a damn difference. I don't know about you. I cannot hear a damn difference.
Yeah, I cannot hear a difference. If I was a betting man, I'd put money on there going to be an alternate mix, but at the last minute, it getting pulled and replaced by the studio mix, and they were unable to change the disc, but they could change the back cover. But I'm not a betting man, so I'm not going to put money on that.
That is one possibility. Another is I've heard remixes before where they've like just changed like some EQ levels and maybe lessened the echo on the drums, and you and I wouldn't notice the difference, but the mixing engineer sure has. So there's two alternative explanations there. The track itself is, I think, 1 second shorter. But that's just tracking. That's not.
Yeah,
that's just tracking. So moving on to the live tracks.
Well, there is one more B-side, and that's from the French CD single, I believe, for Be Quick or Be Dead. And it's called The French Message from Bruce Dickinson. It's just a minute of Bruce speaking in French, thanking French fans and all that. It's not a true B-side, but for comprehensiveness, I did want to bring it up. Thank
you. That's what we try to do here on 50 Years of Iron Maiden. And I've heard tracks like that before on Japanese CD singles, where there'll be a message from the band saying, "Hello, we can't wait to see you. We'll be there in March," or whatever, you know?
Yeah, except in this case, it's "Bonjour, mes amis." And so on
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
forth.
Bruce, well, we'll talk about this more when we get to the live albums, but Bruce is not a bad French speaker. No Prayer for the Dying live. Now, I'm assuming, Harrison, and you will have to confirm for me, that all of these songs were recorded on the No Prayer tour.
They were all recorded on the Wembley show, 1990. Yes, No Prayer for the
Okay.
Dying tour, Wembley.
Okay, so we're going to talk about first the ones that are on the 2 CD set, and then we'll go to the Wasting Love CD single. But we have No Prayer for the Dying live, which I find amusing. I always like the stage banter stuff where Bruce says, do that thing like they do in America where they set fire to the back of everybody's head with a cigarette lighter. No Prayer for the Dying. Great. This is a great live version. And what I have found from doing this particular episode, it's unfortunate that I didn't have this perspective when we did No Prayer for the Dying. But what I have found is that I like these live versions better than the studio versions, and this one's no exception.
Yeah,
Bruce
No
sounds
Prayer for the
less.
Dying, the title track itself, it's not too different from the studio, but it is live, so that means I'm going to like it a lot more. You can really hear how much voices Bruce has greatly recovered from the 88 tour. He's sounding really clean, hitting those high notes. And what you said about liking these versions better, I think you'll hear that a lot in Public Enema #1, because all throughout these songs, Bruce is singing a lot clearer than on the studio. He's not affecting that exaggerated raspy growl anywhere near as much. Sort of like, when Rob Halford said, "Oh, if you don't like this Turbo songs, well, you'll like them when we play them live," sort of thing. I think there's a similar case with No Prayer for the Dying here.
Well, you are anticipating the next B-side, Public Enema #1. Another good version that might surpass the kind of dry sounding album cut. It's the same song.
I think the
same
chorus
arrangement.
sounds better here with a little bit more speed to it. It is slightly faster.
It is slightly faster, and I think the guitar and lead vocals are just performed a little bit more interestingly. Bruce is more comfortable with these songs at this point of the game than he was when he recorded them in the studio.
I like his growls, so I'm like a bit sad that we don't get the growl, but it is nice to have two different versions.
True. Pick your favorite. So as Harrison said, excuse me, Hooks in You was a real actually from the real live one cycle, but it's on this 2 CD set. But just to be accurate to the original releases, we're not going to discuss Hooks in You until we get to that episode. Instead, we go to the Wasting Love single. We'll take a look
and
at
if
the
you got
here.
the Australian tour edition of Fear of the Dark, you got these 3 tracks as a bonus.
I did not know that. So there you go, fans. See if I can get a better image here. There we go. So as you can see, we get Tail Gunner, Holy Smoke, and The Assassin. So starting with Tail Gunner, I like that it's an energized, faster version. I found the bass a bit clanky in the mix, but Bruce's vocals are smoother and less gravelly, so I liked it better.
Well, for me, I hate Tail Gunner, so this live version is like, it's a -9 out of 10 instead of a -10 out of 10, but I still don't like the song.
Moving on to Holy Smoke, Wembley again. I found this better than the studio version, but only slightly, because this is not a great song. I'm sorry, it's not.
Well, I think it's great to hear this song live. I do love the song. I would prefer the growl. Bruce singing a lot clearer here, which sort of takes a bit of the energy out the song. And the last verse kind of goes a bit off the rails with the vocals. Everything sounds a little disjointed, not 100% properly in time. But that could just be my ears.
I used the word amelodic, which may not be a word, but I do want to point out that Janick's guitar solo on this live is like, again, chef's kiss, just awesome. And that brings us to the last track, The Assassin live, which is the most interesting of the live tracks for sure. It's kind of one of the most progressive songs on No Prayer. One of the more progressive songs on No Prayer anyway. Nico's drum work here is exceptional. So the Assassin live, I definitely prefer it to the studio version, and live I would consider it a bit of a deep cut, a good one to find.
Yes, this is the version that grew on me. The better watch outs in particular sound a lot better here with more
Way
natural
better.
sounding backing vocals.
Way better. And surprisingly, we ripped through those. That was not too bad. Let's take a look at the album artwork next. So Melvyn Grant. Some people have likened this Eddie to a Nosferatu kind of vampire Eddie, but I don't like it for a number of reasons. I don't like the basic concept of Eddie kind of like morphing out of a tree, ripping himself. Like you can actually see the bark ripping there. Like he's literally ripping himself out of a tree. You can see intestines on the outside. It doesn't make a lot of logical sense to me, and it also doesn't fit the Iron Maiden continuity that Derek Riggs had going. Pretty decent continuity up until No Prayer, but it completely departs from that. And now we have red eyes, the red bug eyes that I do not like. I like
I
the
kind
color.
of like the art though. I don't mind the colors that are going on. I don't mind the concept. Like, I'm a modern fan, so I've got, the next however many albums worth of different Eddies that look different. So the fact that it's not Derek Riggs' Eddie doesn't bother me as much. I like the colors that are going on. I like the overall composition and everything. But as you're going to point out very shortly, there are better versions of this cover, and I don't think the CD art particularly looks good with this black bar basically covering a third of it.
Right. As you mentioned, I like the color. I like the composition. I like the font that says Fear of the Dark. I love the Iron Maiden logo in yellow, yellow and black. But you'll notice off to the side, there's a lot of wasted space. Wasting love? No, wasted space. Why? I don't know. I speculated with you privately that it might have been painted for cassette. So if we take a look at the cassette there, you
Because
can see it
that
looks
looks
a
a
lot
lot
better.
better.
Yeah. So maybe that is the case. Maybe it was designed for cassette. I don't know, but it does look more appropriate there than it does there. Just my opinion. Well, this is the part of the show where Harrison talks about the tour. So I know we're going to talk about a lot of the stuff when we do the live albums. So what can you tell us about the Fear of the Dark tour without giving too much away for what we're going to discuss next time?
Well, gone were the gargantuan 2-year long massive super tours with tons of dates. The Fear of the Dark tour was a mere 66 dates from June to November of 1992. Despite this, however, they still managed to get all over the world. They went to the States, they went all over Europe, they got to Japan, South America, they even made 2 dates in Australia and 1 in New Zealand. So they spread those 66 dates well over the world. It wasn't just, Priest when I hate to keep pitting Maiden against Priest, but Priest were like all over the US in '86 and like that was it sort of thing. But this set list is notable for being massive, gargantuan, 20-song set list for Iron Maiden, which they just don't do anymore. I know these days they only do like 15 or 16. I know that's only like a 5 or 6 song difference, I think. But no, it is 4 or 5 song difference. But yeah, despite this massive set list, there were only 5 songs from Fear of the Dark. That was Be Quick or Be Dead, From Here to Eternity, Wasting Love, Afraid to Shoot Strangers, and Fear of the Dark. So that's less than half of Fear of the Dark, which proportionally makes it one of the most underrepresented Iron Maiden albums on the live circuit. Not that I'm complaining, because I don't care about the album very much, but I would have liked to have heard Judas Be My Guide live. But despite this, going forward, this album, similarly to No Prayer for the Shrine, basically dropped off the face of the set list, apart from the eternal title track, Fear of the Dark, which I think has been on every tour since except one. I think Made in England didn't have it, but don't quote me on that. We haven't got to that area yet. Afraid to Shoot Strangers sort of stayed around for a little bit. In fact, it got a second life in the Blaze Bayley years. The song was rejuvenated. His voice gave it that gravitas that it always yearned, and I think that's the definitive version of the song. But we're not there yet. So to say, as you pointed out, we are doing the live albums next week. There were a lot of them. We're going to be crushing them all into 1 week because as nobody wants a 3-hour Fear of the Dark episode, nobody wants to spend a month on 90s Iron Maiden live albums. But just to give our final thoughts on the album, at most, I can only give this album a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And that's being generous. It's really more of a 3-star when you count that my preferred versions of these songs are other versions, not the studio versions.
Well, that's interesting because I was also going to say 3 out of 5 stars, even though I was generally more positive about a lot of the tracks. So we're in agreement in the end.
At the end of the day, mediocre Iron Maiden album is still pretty good, all things considered, for me.
I will say this, which is context matters. And when this came out in 1992, I was very happy that Iron Maiden was back. I was very happy that they were writing, to my ears, catchier songs than No Prayer, because I really wasn't that into No Prayer. This album was a big one for me in the summer of 1992. It was constantly jammed into my tape deck. I listened to this about 20 times this week alone, and I enjoyed it. So I don't want to come across too negative. When you listen to an album 20 times in a row during a week and you still enjoy it, that's a good album. So not the greatest Iron Maiden. We're talking about a band that has done Peace of Mind, that has done Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. So when you have the bar so high as this, Fear of the Dark being down here, maybe, still not too bad. If this had been another band's album, could have been their best. You never know. Anyway, those are my closing thoughts. Any final words?
No, I think I've said everything that I want to say for the moment.
Okay. Well, that's it for this
Well, I
episode.
say for the moment, we're about to end it. That was the wrong thing to say. I've said everything I want to say, period. End of story. Enough of Fear of the Dark. Let's go to the live albums.
Oh, don't be so bloody pedantic, Steve. Anyway, that's it for this episode of 50 Years of Iron Maiden. We will see you next time for a real live one, a real dead one, live at Donington. And I think we're even going to tackle Raising Hell.
Yeah, might as
and
well
some
do them all in
singles.
one.
And some singles. So that's going to be a pretty epic episode too. We'll see you next time on Grab a Stack of Rock with 50 Years of Iron Maiden. If you'd like to help the channel out, check it out. Harrison has designed his own original Lego art Iron Maiden shirts that you can pick up at tpublic.com. So if you'd like to help the channel out, like us, subscribe, and hey, if you want to buy a shirt, that's cool too. Take care. We'll see you next time on 50 Years of Iron Maiden.